You are in the temple of the rants where I rant about whatever my $15 a month plus patrons want me to rant about. You can get one of these by being one of those. This one is for Jumpy, who says, rant about experimental cinema. If you don't have any in mind, I'd recommend watching a short film by Japanese director Toshio Matsumoto called Atman. Here's the link. It's on YouTube. I would love to hear about your thoughts on the topic in general, and perhaps the short film as well. Well, I made this video called The Appeal of Art House about a year ago, I think, maybe a little more, where I talk about, like, generally why I think that art house is interesting and experimental films is that they are going out of their way to express something extremely specific most of the time that you can't turn that into a traditional story, you know? It's like there's a lot of emotions or aesthetics or just weird feelings and ideas that we have that can't be put into words easily or can't be turned into a traditional three-act story, but are still interesting to share. And art house is just basically an excuse to do that. It's an excuse to represent some other deeper emotion. And I think that when you find an art house piece that, like, you really recognize that emotion and it like does something for you, that will probably be one of your favorite things. Like, all of us can appreciate a good three-act story. We can all appreciate, traditional motivations, values in a character, like a story that has something to say that is recognizable and that resonates with us. But when you watch something that you could not possibly explain, but you totally understand, that's a really special feeling and a really powerful feeling. And so, to me, experimental cinema, it's kind of in a position where, like, obviously most of it is not going to be enjoyed by most people, and most people are not going to go out of their way to dive through everything anybody makes on the off chance that they're going to find something that's going to hit them super hard, you know? Like, I can't imagine showing this Atman. I clicked through it. I didn't watch the whole thing. I did think it was pretty ill from what I watched. But, like, I cannot imagine showing that to 99% of people and then coming away with anything other than confusion, perhaps revulsion, just being like, what the fuck was that? I definitely felt something, like, just looking at what I did. It's basically just this really weird, warbly music with just like photos, I guess, circling, maybe just short clips of film of this guy, this badass looking dude in an Oni mask, just being, like, shot and, like, circled around with a camera, but it keeps cutting closer and farther away, and the background is all red. It looks pretty cool. It definitely gives you, like, this demonic feeling, this, like, again, I can't really express this in words. It's really something you'd have to watch and just go, like, wow, that was cool, or wow, that was stupid. Either reaction is equally valid. I would love to watch it in its entirety while under the influence of drugs or alcohol, because I think that's a state of mind that allows you to sort of lower your guard a bit more and not, like, burden yourself with trying to think about what you're watching, and instead just experience it and take that in, and just have the reaction you have. But those kinds of experiences are also difficult to describe or to tell other people about. If I say, oh, dude, I got super high and watched Ant-Man and it was so fucking cool, and then people be like, well, like, what the hell's the point of it? Like, that's not an interesting story to tell someone. It's more like you watch it for yourself, you come to a conclusion of whether you thought it was cool or not, because how we feel about this thing is going to be very primal and not necessarily easily expressed through words. Like, I could talk about literally what is in the film and maybe even try to grasp at why it's done that way, but I would be shocked if even the guy who created it could, like, explain it in such clear terms. It's more like probably something that he had this vision and then created it and then went, yeah, that's what I wanted it to be. You know, personally, I love. I always encourage anybody, if you have experimental ideas, you have to do it. You have to do it. Don't worry about if anybody gives a fuck. You gotta do it, because if anybody does give a fuck, you have now spoken in a language beyond language. You know, you've spoken in a deeper, more cathartic language. I think one that will really reach deep into somebody's fucking soul if they appreciate it. I'm trying to think. There's one. I remember watching some of this one experimental Japanese film. I don't remember who it was by or what it was called, but it had a J.A. Caesar soundtrack, and it was like the first time I'd ever watched some like truly experimental shit, and I was just like, what in the actual fuck is happening here? Like, I can't believe that they were able to organize a budget, or like to even like arrange people who would work on this, you know, that kind of feeling. But there is very much a sect of people out there who, you know, who have the open-mindedness to say that they're not even concerned about like such things as, is this a good or bad product, or like they're not even thinking about it in those terms at all, you know. Someone like Zen Huxtable, who, when he and I trip acid together, we just watch a bunch of fucking weird shit and, you know, show each other things that we've created. And I never have the impression that he is thinking about at all, is this thing good? He's thinking, what do I get out of this? Like, what and what do you get out of this? Like, I'm interested in comparing notes with you. I'm interested in understanding why this made you feel something, and whether or not I can gain anything out of that, or at least, you know, understand you better through the fact, even just the fact sometimes. Like, if I know that somebody enjoyed some art house piece, I don't need them to tell me why. It tells me something about them in and of itself, that they were able to find some meaning in this, even if it's intangible, you know? So yeah, I think experimental cinema is important and cool. It's never going to be mainstream, obviously, because it's never going to resonate with everybody, but I really want... I want more specific details of people's minds, you know? And I think that while more mainstream creations, they have a piece of that usually. Like, you know, even if you make a movie that has a traditional structure and all, if it has any kind of distinctive visual aesthetic, if there's anything about the way the characters talk, any element of the author's hand that gets, you know, that drips in there, that will add a lot to the experience, and it might be enough to make it a great or unique film. But when you see a piece like this that nobody else could have possibly created because it's such a specific idea in this person's head, it makes me feel like I have gained a like huge extra depth of understanding of the human mind, to have known that somebody came up with this, even just that they came up with it, you know, because I wouldn't have come up with it. So that means there's something fundamentally different about the two of us, you know. But yeah, I thought that one was pretty sick. I would definitely watch it drunk.